Good evening. It is 9:18 on Wednesday evening. This is coming at you a lot later than what is typical and a lot later than what I was anticipating and hoping for. So my apologies there. Took me a little while to get through the last proposal assignment. So sorry about that. Um, okay, so there's lots of stuff on the radar. I wanted to walk everybody through that, primarily because there are some changes for this week and changes coming up that I want to make sure you're aware of. Okay, before we get to that, a couple of just notes that I have over here on this other screen. So I'm sorry if it doesn't seem like I'm looking at you, mostly because I'm not. Um, First thing, the critiques are a lot of fun to read. Um, you're really starting to read and analyze with a keen insight, and I think that's really cool. So, thanks for your work on those. I know I've said this before, but I think it bears repeating that those criticisms that you're finding in the research articles that you're analyzing can be really beneficial when you are writing your own research. So continue to think about what you really appreciated in some of those studies and what you really kind of hated in some of those studies. And copy the format and the tone and the attitude and uh, the the clarity that you find in the good stuff and avoid at all costs some of the things that annoy you about some of those articles, right? So, um, so this week, no, before we get to this week, a couple of other things. Uh, for 4.3 and a little bit in 4.2, I'm still seeing some lack of consistency in APA citations. Um, Please make sure that when you're using quotation marks in APA citations, I'm not talking about your in-text citations where you're quoting something, you have quotation marks, but like the actual reference, the APA reference. If you're using quotation marks, should you? Should the titles have quotation marks? Do you know for sure? You should be owning all of this stuff, right? Italics. When are you going to use italics? When are you not going to use italics? You should know exactly when that happens and how that happens. Capitalization. Remember, when you're talking about the title of an article, you are capitalizing the first word of both the title and the subtitle and any other, formal nouns that are proper nouns that are in that title. But you are capitalizing every word, every significant word of the journal article where that, or not the journal or article, the journal where that article is being published, right? Um, Hanging indents. Make sure that you're including hanging indents. Don't guess at it. If there is a question, let me back up a second. If you go to course information and scroll down, this APA sample paper is from Purdue OWL. And if you scroll all the way down in that APA sample paper to the references section, you can see exactly what that's supposed to look like. Again, keep going back to Purdue OWL, keep going back to your official APA book if you happen to have that. But please don't guess at the citations. Those are going to become more and more significant. I'm going to treat those more and more seriously. And by this point, we're looking for mastery, right? Um, if you're quoting in anything APA, please remember that if you're quoting, you need to have the page number. Okay, so I'm going to drag this over so you can see this, some of my notes, right? This right here. Okay, there are two different ways that you can quote. The first one is to do it a little bit more informally, where you mention the name of the researcher right in what you're writing. Okay, so according to Baba 2007, blah, 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 page 42. That's the way to do it. If you want it to make it a little bit more formal and you're not referencing the name of the author in the text, put that behind, and both of these things are separated by commas. Okay, that's the proper format. Um, okay, now let me see if I can get rid of that. There we go. Again, you can see examples of that in the APA sample paper. You can see examples of that in Purdue OWL. Okay. Um, all right. Let's move on to this week because this week is a little bit odd. Instead of 3 assignments, there are 4 assignments. But I really don't think that this is going to take you much longer or any longer than the prior ones have taken you. So you've got a couple options when it comes to your reading. Assignment Excuse me, sorry for scrolling so much. Assignment 5.1 is our discussion board. It's pretty straightforward. You're not going to have to do a whole lot of digging because you're basically just going with what you already know. Some of you are not currently in districts or you're starting new districts, starting in new schools, and you may not necessarily have that information. That's fine. Go with what you knew in the past or what you did most recently or your school did most recently. That's fine. For 5.2, which is normally the tables, this is not a table assignment, okay? This should be APA format. It's asking specifically referencing the reading as needed, but using your own words. Again, careful not to plagiarize. But about a paragraph for each one of these things. Use APA format in this. I'm going to be looking for APA citations. I want to make sure that you guys are mastering this at this point. Then 5.3 and 5.4 is data and data collection, and both of these can be in table format. Okay, go ahead, single space table format this. This obviously is going to be, if it's APA, it's double spaced, it's paragraph format, it's a little bit more formal, right? So both of these things, because they're tables, I think should be a little bit easier to handle, a little quicker, right? But you're still going to have to do a bit of a deep dive into your 2 articles. But by this point, you should have a really good understanding of how your 2 articles work. Chances are you've seen these sections before. You're familiar with them, okay? So anyway, that's this week, right? The one other thing I wanted to point you to is just a heads up for week 7, which is actually module 7 and module 8 are both in the same week. And I know that's going to potentially freak a couple of people out that you've got, double the amount of work in the same amount of time. That isn't the case, and let me explain why. Okay, module 7, which is a couple of weeks away, has 3 assignments in it. Okay, it looks honestly very similar to module 3, module 4. You got 7.1 is the discussion board, great. 7.2, you're comparing the 2 articles again. Again, that's a table, it's a little bit more informal. That isn't any news there. 7.3 is a little bit different because I'm making it optional. Mostly because 7 and 8 are due the same week, and 8 is everything put together. It doesn't make sense for me. It doesn't make sense for me to ask you to have 7.3, the proposal, due at the very same time as your entire proposal. So I'm making the proposal of the findings, 7.3, an optional assignment. If you want to do it, great. I'm going to give you feedback. I'm going to grade it because I learned a long time ago if you make optional assignments and just say, I'm only going to count it if it's worth some, if it benefits your grade, students don't spend as much time on it and it ends up being disappointing and wasting my time as a grader. You've probably seen that too. So if you do 7.3, a couple of things. Number one, I will grade it. It will count towards the assessment for the entire course. And number two, I'm going to need it by the Wednesday. instead of Sunday at midnight, it's due Wednesday at midnight. That'll give me a couple of days to give you the feedback that you're going to need, and then give you a couple of days to make the adjustments that are needed for your final proposal. Okay, so hope that's clear. So I did adjust the due date for this. If you don't want to do it, just don't submit it. I'm not going to count it against you. It's just going to be like it's not even there. Um, and then I'll check early Thursday morning to see what's there, and I'll start providing feedback. Okay, then that's 7, module 7. The same week you have module 8. There are only 2 assignments due in module 8, and again, one of them is optional. This is something I find it valid, but I want you to spend more of your time on the actual full proposal than you do on this. So if you have the time, by all means, go ahead and post. And the post, because there might not be a whole lot of people participating, really I'm just going to be kind of prorating that for just your individual post and not necessarily the commentary on anybody else's. So if you post and it's a good post, I'm going to give you all the points for it, regardless of whether you comment on somebody else's or not. Okay. That is, even though it's optional like the other one, that's still going to be due Sunday at midnight. And then finally, your final proposal. This is the grand poobah. This is like everything put together. But hopefully, if you have been working really hard on all of the point 3 assignments up to this point, point 4 for this next module, if you've been following some of the feedback that I've been giving you and you've been doing some updating maybe as you go, this proposal should be a little easier than, let me rephrase that. This should not be as overly concerning to you now at this point of the class as it was at the beginning of the class. Okay, not saying it's not going to be difficult, but we've already worked through about half of this. And then we still have Module 5 and Module 6. And if you are interested in Module 7, I can give you feedback on that. So hopefully by the end, nearly every piece of this final proposal will have already gotten feedback from me. You've been able to think about it critically and creatively over the course of the last month, month and a half. So that's the rationale of why Northwestern's Education Department has organize this class the way that they have in both of these modules being due this final week. Okay, so again, if you have questions, make sure you shoot me an email. You let me know. I'm still sitting on a couple of emails. I don't know necessarily if I'm going to get to them tonight. If you emailed me this afternoon, it might be tomorrow morning before I get to them, but I'm getting close to caught up. So again, if you have questions, let me know how I can help you. Looking forward to hearing from you and seeing what you come up with this week. So good luck. God bless. Hope all is well.